Last night's episode of AEW Dynamite had a lot of hype going into the episode with a dream match between Will Ospreay versus Rey Fenix, Mercedes Moné in action, and Swerve Strickland on the mic. But did it live up to the hype? Well, let's break it down segment by segment, emoji by emoji. You're watching Allison Analysis. Now, before we start, please hit the like button and subscribe. Thank you. We kicked things off on Dynamite with a Swerve Strickland promo. He came out to the ring and was very quickly followed by the Elite, the EVPs. This was great, a really enjoyable segment, and the Elite said, hey, we want a blood and guts match. We want to prove ourselves inside blood and guts. And Swerve, we want you on our team. Now this part, I didn't mind them wanting Swerve on their team, but this blood and guts match just felt like it came out of nowhere. Like, I prefer blood and guts when it's really got a story going into it, rather than them just saying, hey, we want a blood and guts match to prove ourselves. I guess that's the basis of a storyline, but it just doesn't really make sense. It just feels like blood and guts came up on the calendar and they were like, oh yeah, forgot about that. It feels very random, and the fact the Acclaimed are seemingly going to be in it feels very weird to me as well. And I like the Acclaimed, don't get me wrong, but them in a blood and guts match, I don't know, they just don't kind of feel like that level to me. I don't know even how to explain it better than that. But hey, hopefully they'll prove me wrong, and I'm glad they're getting the opportunity, so I'm going to wait and see. But this segment itself, right, if we don't look at the bigger picture and we focus on this segment itself, I really enjoyed it. It was a great way to start Dynamite, and it got fans excited for not only the action during the night itself, but also going forward after this episode of AEW Dynamite, so it's going to get a little bit of a subtle round of applause from me. Up next, Jack Perry took on Dustin Rhodes in a qualifying match for the TNT ladder match. And Dustin Rhodes is 55 years old. He's been wrestling for 35 years. And somehow he still looks good in the ring. Somehow he still moves like he's young. Yes, towards the end of the match he started getting a little bit more tired. But they played into it so well that I'm not even entirely sure if it was just storyline. Like, seriously, I don't understand how on earth Dustin still is able to move like that at his age. It's really, really impressive, and something I don't think people are talking about enough. Shout out to Dustin Rhodes. Seriously, so underrated. But ultimately, Jack Perry defeated him last night on Dynamite, and it was 100% the right decision, no doubt about it. But the only thing I will say about this match was it kind of felt a little bit weird, because Jack Perry was like half the size of Dustin Rhodes. And it's weird when, the massively bigger guy is the babyface. And that's kind of the vibe I got during this. That didn't pop me off it massively, but it was just a little bit weird. But still, overall, it does get a thumbs up from me. It was an enjoyable match. But yeah, the size difference was just a little bit weird for me. Roosh then defeated, pretty much squashed, a Cody Rhodes cosplayer with a weight belt. Yeah, that's all there is to say about this one. But after he defeated the B-Tech Cody Rhodes, MJF came out, and Roosh and MJF had a brilliant brawl around the arena. This was really exciting. Of course the security looked dumb, but they've looked dumb in every wrestling brawl ever. And the trend continues. But I really liked this, and I liked how out of nowhere it turned really chaotic. And it got me excited for their eventual feud. Well, the eventual match, they have been feuding between Roosh and MJF, which will happen next week on AEW Dynamite, commercial free. I enjoyed this a lot. It gets a subtle round of applause from me. Up next with a 6-man tag team match with Orange Cassidy, Kyle O'Reilly, and Mark Briscoe taking on Takeshita, Kyle Fletcher, and Roderick Strong. And this match, it had a few tiny bits of sloppy moments during the start. But once it got going, boy, oh boy, was this brilliant. It truly, truly was. This, seriously, it exceeded my expectations and then some. It felt like one of those New Japan tag matches with the closing moments, a lot of kickouts, a lot of false finishes, and it was just really fun. In fact, it can take my applause too. Seriously, I really, really enjoyed this match a lot more than I thought I would. I kind of thought this was the filler segment when it was first announced, but it certainly exceeded that and then some. Huck and Joe then squashed the premier athletes, and Tony Nese has gone from a WrestleMania level competitor to a premier jobber. Anyway, this squash match was decent. It did its job. Joe and Huck together are feeling like a big deal. The crowd was loving them. AEW need to capitalize on them. They can't mess this up. Mercedes Moné then defeated Zusis in what was a really, really fun match. Seriously, I'm going to say it every week and I'll continue to say it, but Mercedes Moné is money. Every time she steps in that ring, you almost forget how good she is until she wrestles, but then as soon as she wrestles, you're like, yeah, that's why they pay her the big bucks. She fully deserves it, and she's really brought some more life to this AEW women's division. Now, unfortunately, they're still only doing one women's segment per show. That trend is continuing. Hopefully it'll change soon. If not, AEW need to be called out for it again. They can't keep getting away with this. Because they've signed Mercedes Moné now. They're featuring her almost every week. And that has meant that the rest of the women's division's kind of suffering. They'll still find a way to do something with Toni Storm and Mariah May. But if Mercedes is in a match, then they're not in a match. And they'll just have a segment. Probably a backstage one. Like what happened last night. It's becoming an issue. Not even becoming an issue. It's always been an issue. AEW just don't give enough time to the women's division. And then they're like, oh, well, the women don't draw those high ratings or whatever. And it's like, well, yeah, they're not drawing those ratings because you're not establishing them as draws. You've got to put in the work. You've got to put in the time to establish them as rating movers. It really, really frustrates me. WWE have established, 10 top women's stars. Honestly, about 10 in the time that AEW has been around. And AEW have kind of just failed to do so. Up next, I hope you have your text box ready because it is time for TV time with the Learning Tree, Chris Jericho. Hi, guys! I'm still really enjoying this storyline. I really, really am. I know some people aren't liking this Learning Tree gimmick, but it's just so easy to hate him that I kind of love it. This is maybe the best Chris Jericho has been in AEW since the early days, since he was champion, since a little bit of the bubbly. So I'm really enjoying it. I still think Brian Keith being in it is a little bit of a weird one. But this segment focused around Private Party. Chris Jericho wanted to teach them a thing or two. Well, let me just say this. Private Party were more relevant in this segment than they have been, I think, in years in AEW. Maybe since 2019, 2020. And that is the Chris Jericho effect. He spotlights younger talent. And I know the joke is that he doesn't do that. But ultimately he does. Listen, at times I will criticize Chris Jericho matches right now. And, a few months ago I was really criticizing him because his entire gimmicks became really boring. But hey, it feels fresh again right now. But he's never not tried to elevate talent. That's the one part I never get when people say it. You can't relate him to Hulk Hogan in any way. So that segment, it does get a thumbs up from me. I'm glad that, Chris Jericho is continuing to elevate younger talent in these spots. Because again, Private Party felt the most relevant they've been in quite a while. Daniel Garcia then very quickly defeated Nick Comoroto. And I'm going to be honest about this. Somebody like Daniel Garcia doesn't need squash victories. This was the third squash match on the show, and this one was unnecessary. It truly was. In fact, it's going to get a thumbs down, and maybe I'm being nice about it. But the squash itself was fine. But Daniel Garcia doesn't need squash victories, and you had 2 squash matches on the show already. This was the one major flaw, I think, with the entire episode of last night's AEW Dynamite. For the most part, the episode was really, really good. But you didn't need a squash here. It felt filler. This time could have gone to maybe having the Mariah May Toni Storm segment happen in front of the crowd. Or something like that. Or even just adding on a few minutes to the main event. I didn't like this at all. But what I did like was Will Ospreay versus Rey Fenix. And out of the gates, I'll just say it gets my applause. I'm going to be honest, it did not live up to the dream match hype. It wasn't an amazing match. It won't go down as a match of the year contender or anything like that. But it was a really fun and impressive TV main event. It did its job in terms of, being the main event of AEW Dynamite. The thing which hurt this match the most, I think, was the amount of commercials during it. Like, I think there was like 2 or 3 commercials during it. It was really, really weird how many there were in like 15 minutes. And that really took away from the momentum of the match, which is why I don't think, it got a higher rating. I felt like that's why it had a bit of a weird flow to it. And also, early on in the match, there was a few no-sellers, which I wasn't particularly keen on. But hey, you're going to have to expect that here. But it was still a lot of fun, right? And so it did its job. It did its job as a main event. It was fun and entertaining. And if the show ended there, I would have said, great episode, great ending, all of that good stuff. But the ending was money. In fact, it can take all the money bags it wants. It can take my money. Because Will Ospreay and Swerve Strickland, they got face to face, and Will Ospreay took that AEW championship off of Swerve Strickland, and Swerve, well, he was not happy at all. We're really getting some, hatred between these two men now, despite the fact they say they're still friends. There's a lot of healthy competitiveness between them. Does that make sense? Healthy competitiveness? I don't know. But whatever that means, there was some. It was a lot of fun to see these guys go face to face. And I cannot wait until Forbidden Door. Yes, there's nothing forbidden about this match. It probably should be on another pay-per-view or something like that. Not Forbidden Door. But still, I'm so excited to see it. And hey, I'm sure it'll get a lot of people to buy the pay-per-view, which is what I'm presuming. Well, the reason I'm presuming it was booked. So I'm excited to see it. Overall, this episode of AEW Dynamite was really, really fun. And fun is the word which I think describes Dynamite when you look at the 5-year history of the show. Fun is the word which describes so many of the best episodes. And listen, over the past year, too many episodes haven't been fun enough. But hey, this one was certainly a lot of fun, so I'm happy about it, no doubt about that, and it gets a subtle round of applause on the whole from me. The one major flaw was I just thought there was one too many squash matches. Daniel Garcia, a small babyface, he doesn't need a squash match. He doesn't need squash victories. He doesn't need it for his character, right? He's meant to feel like the underdog. Squash victories do nothing to help that. Nothing. And they did nothing to advance the show either. In fact, it just kind of stalled the momentum. I'm really excited for next week's episode. They built that really well. MJF Roosh, commercial free. I'm hyped for that. They also did a brilliant job of advancing the Will Ospreay versus Swerve Strickland feud for Forbidden Door, and also Mina versus Tony Storm. I'm excited for their contract signing next week. Guys, if you did enjoy this video, please like and subscribe. It helps us out here at Wrestling Republic massively. And I will be back for some more Allison Analysis Friday night for SmackDown, and then Saturday for Clash at the Castle. I will see you guys then. Peace.